Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to another video. Hope you are all doing well. So I wanted to do today's video for a few different reasons, and I'm gonna get into each one kind of in order. The first thing that I wanted to address is an article that just got published today in the Anderson Valley Advertiser, better known as the AVA, which is in Mendocino County and Northern California. It was written by Mike Geniella, who was the public information officer for the Mendocino County District Attorney's Office for about 10 years. And before that, I believe he worked for the Press Democrat in Sonoma County. So I've never met Mike Geniella in person or anything like that. I've read some of his articles, the more recent ones, more specifically in regards to the Brady list in specific to Mendocino County with the District Attorney's Office there, since that's where he was once affiliated with. So I kind of want to just go over this article that he wrote, just like little bits and pieces of it. I'm not going to cover the entire thing just for purposes of time. I'll link it below. I put this on my Instagram story earlier today too, and I had some people ask me some questions about it. So I figured that I would just do a video regarding it. And I thought that it was interesting too. And then there's a couple other things that I wanted to cover as well. But the purpose of this video is to, you know, enlighten you guys and let you guys know and understand when you're, you know, when we're dealing with corruption, you know, in law enforcement, at the DA's level, city council stuff, which, you know, I just covered in my last video at the city council in city of Fort Bragg in Mendocino County, and the media and everything that plays into a lot of this. And, you know, I just kind of want to point out some of the lies that are being told to you guys and the illusions that are portrayed in a lot of these articles that are riddled with bias and written and articulated in a certain manner to give the impression of, you know, whatever their agenda happens to be, you know, because you can, you know, you're going to read something, right, in an article, and however the journalist, and I use that term very loosely when it comes to people, reporters in Mendocino County, the journalist is not just applicable to Mendocino County, but just in general, okay? But, you know, they word things in such a way, and then when you read it, it is going to take you in a certain direction, all right? And what I've found, especially recently, is these people that put out these articles, they're not truthful. In my prior experience, that is a big one. They're not truthful. They don't fact check. They don't even bother to verify any evidence. There's no evidentiary value to a lot of these articles and things in the media that come out pertaining to, you know, not just Mendocino County, but in general, but specifically Mendocino County in this case. And there's no accountability. And in my mind, they are written for a reason, in a certain way, for a certain reason, to push an agenda. And that's seen in, you know, when you look at like CNN, Fox News, all that stuff, right? You have like the left and the right. They say things a certain way. They want you to see things in a certain way, their way, to push whatever narrative that they're trying to get you to essentially be brainwashed by, right? So in a long-winded explanation, which that just was, I just want to kind of bring to light and shed some truth on a lot of some of these things, just so you as the public can have a better understanding, especially in terms of cops that are liars, that do illegal things, and you know, whatever. I mean, that's essentially why I created this channel to begin with. So this article, and I'm going to be referencing my computer here. That's why I'm looking in this direction, just FYI. So this article written by Mike Geniella, like I said, came out today in the AVA, An Ugly End to a Stellar Law Enforcement Career by Mike Geniella. And he covers Chris Awad, who I've had in my last 4 YouTube videos. Chris Awad, that those of you didn't watch that, was a prior police sergeant for the Fort Bragg Police Department in the city of Fort Bragg in Mendocino County in Northern California. And Chris Awad, long story short, he was terminated back in 2020, I believe, from the Fort Bragg Police Department. A very long story short, and you guys can go back and watch those videos if you happen to care or want to do so, is he arrested a girl for DUI. It went to court, and the attorney, the prosecution and the defense attorney made an agreement that this DUI would be dropped to a wet and reckless, which is a less severe charge for a DUI. It's also a very, very common plea deal to get for first offender, you know, people that are first, you know, that DUI is their first offense, you know. Habitual DUI offenders are not going to be afforded that same luxury. But basically what happened is they made an agreement, the prosecution and the defense, and stated, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do this plea deal, which, like I said, is very common. And Chris Awad had developed a friendship with this woman after he arrested her. And at a certain point when court proceedings had not fully finalized, but they assumed that they weren't even going to have to go to court because Chris Awad was notified by the prosecution, I believe this guy's name is Sisney, that not verbatim, but he was of the understanding that there was going to be a wet and reckless plea deal made, meaning when there's a plea deal as a cop, you're not going to go to court because they just made a plea deal, right? It's not going to go to jury trial or anything like that. So Chris Awad ends up hooking up with this, I'm just going to use that term, hooking up with this girl, completely consensual. They're both adults. They were both single at the time. Not that any of that, I mean, you know, some of that matters, some of that doesn't. But Sisney ended up getting in an argument with David Eister, who is the district attorney then, well now and then at that time. And Sisney just dipped. He just took off. So this plea deal is now, you know, Eister reviews it and says like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to go to trial. And long story short, Chris Awad ended up getting terminated because he did not disclose his friendship or this hookup incident up front with Melissa Weems, who was the deputy district attorney at the time. And subsequently, in this article and in court arbitration, which I provided in those videos, Chris Awad never lied. He never committed perjury. For those insane people that have watched my videos and still are under that impression, it baffles me, but he never lied or perjured himself. He was fired because he failed to disclose a relationship, which he should have done for sure. He admits that. And he was placed on a Brady list. Now, Brady, and this is something that I wanted to touch on because it involves, you know, cops that lie and do, you know, a lot of things, and they're on this list. So Brady list was determined by a 1963 U.S. Supreme Court decision, requires prosecutors. So, you know, at the DA's office level, attorneys, the prosecution that are going to be arguing on behalf of the state, right? So their job is to get the conviction, you know, to get the guilty plea and those sorts of things. So it requires the prosecutors to divulge to defense attorneys any information about law enforcement officers with histories of misconduct that could impact their credibility testifying under oath. So lying in official capacity, falsifying reports, you know, withholding evidence, planting evidence, just in general being untruthful in any, while you're in the, you know, while you're functioning as a law enforcement officer. And so there's the whole, you know, wide variety of things that could land you on this Brady list. The problem with it is there's no uniformity. It is not nationwide, meaning that, and it covers this in Mike Geniella's article, not every DA's office in the United States of America practices this, or they do it in their own way. There is no blanket guideline for the entire United States of America on the DA's office will, if you have a Brady's list, first of all, it doesn't say that everybody has to have one. But it doesn't say like there will be a Brady's list in every single county in the United States of America. And these are the rules specifically that you have to follow. And this is what is going to land you on this list. Essentially, the idea behind this, right, is you get a cop that is dishonest, lies, does something egregious in the performance of his duty, whatever the case is, to impact their credibility, meaning they're a liar. And the idea behind it is that you can never you can never testify again. You can never go to court again. You can never do anything because it's already been determined that you're untruthful and you're dishonest, right? So how can we believe anything that you ever say? And essentially it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be terminated right then and there. I mean, there's a lot of, cops have unions and rights and everything like that. It's very hard to get fired at some of these agencies. And so it doesn't mean you're going to get fired necessarily, but it basically prevents you from doing anything. You can't go to calls anymore. You can't even answer the phone anymore to take reports. You can't do reports. And because we don't know if you're going to be lying about literally anything else going forward because you've already done it before. You know what I mean? So that's the idea behind it. And so that's what that is. Anyway, continuing on with this article. And Mike Geniella interviewed Chris Awad for this, right? So Chris Awad says, I'm not excusing my actions. I admit I made mistakes, but the DA and the city came after me hard. I don't think I deserve that. So, Yeah, and then it just goes on to show here, and I got to hand it to Mike Geniella. He actually did his research and his due diligence, and he is the only reporter that I've seen in Mendocino County that actually backs up his stuff with facts. With he when he interviews people, are you willing to go on the record with this, and what verify their credentials, and what they're saying is matter of fact and not just making up random things, or not fact checking, or writing things, like I said, in a certain way to give the impression that it's something when it's not, and that goes down to the ethics of journalism, which, like I said, him and one other person I can think of that write in that county have. And the first one being truth and accuracy. So journalists can influence public perception, and therefore it's imperative they practice ethical journalism by ensuring information is true and accurate and the coverage of the story is fair. Research must be thorough, facts verified, whenever possible, original sources, whether, records should be used if you can. And, so Mike Geniella does a really good job at that. And we can, see that in all of his articles, as well as the things that he asked of Chris Awad, and he asked to provide documentation of certain things. Whereas we don't see that with anybody else in Mendocino County. I don't. And I know that there's a lot of liars that write in that county, and they don't do any of this. And they just, it's basically like they write an article. They get one person to say whatever they're going to say to them in an interview. They don't fact check it. They don't verify the information is accurate. They don't question the person's motive whatsoever, the bias there or anything like that. And then they publish it as fact with zero accountability. And they write it in a certain way that promotes that idea that it is factual and it is truthful. And then they don't contact the other person for their side, right? There's always two sides to a story. And it's very important to do that in law enforcement as a cop. That's like how these people write in Mendocino County, or media in general. It's kind of like me as a cop going to, any call, like two people get in a physical altercation, right? And I just go and I talk to one person, and he says, yeah, that guy beat me up unprovoked and I didn't do anything wrong. Okay, cool. Now as a cop, I'm just going to go and arrest that guy. And that's it. Just because I'm going to take this guy's word for it, and whatever he's saying is truth and fact. So these journalists in Mendocino County have a bad habit, which they do intentionally, of getting one side and not the other. And they will make a pathetic one-off maybe attempt at contacting somebody to get their side of it via an old email, and if they can't do that, then they just continue on and say, oh, that's their get out of jail card, right? Like, oh, I attempted to make contact. Well, how'd you do that exactly? You didn't, did you? No, you didn't. So that's why I like this article, and why I wanted to bring it up, because it's very it's an honest article. Now, everybody has agendas. There are some biases to a lot of things. Like when I do these videos, I have certain biases, right? I don't like the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office administration. I don't like the administration at the Willits Police Department, based on my personal experiences, because those guys are corrupt and they're untruthful, and there's a lot of backdoor dealings and stuff like that. And, do as I say, not as I do. All of them are undocumented felons. And so I have a bias against that, right? Like I just don't like those people. So, but at the same time, I don't make things up about them. So when I'm not sure about something, I've always said that in all my videos. I'm not sure, I can't verify this. This is what I've heard. And mostly that's when people ask me to address rumors. But I don't give information and present it as fact when it's not. Because then you open yourself up for, civil lawsuits, which is coming for some of these people. And it makes you less credible when you do that, right? And we've seen, as I've done in my videos a year and a half now, a lot of these things are starting to come true that people were calling me saying I was lying about. So, so the credibility is there. Anyway, so back to this Brady thing. Mike Geniella actually went out and contacted the defense attorney that had made this deal with Sisney. And he said, he verified that. And he said, yeah, we had this deal. And then Sisney and Eister got into this huge argument. Sisney left the DA's office for good. And then Melissa Weems, who was the person that took over for Sisney at the time, took over the DUI case, and they wanted to take it to trial and now give this girl a DUI. The wet and reckless was off the table. So the public defender stated Awad's demeanor on the witness stand was indeed odd. But he understood why later on, based on the friendship. I had negotiated a plea agreement with Sisney on the defendant's behalf, and Awad thought he was not going to have to testify against her. But Sisney, the original prosecutor here, they had a blow up, like I said. He left, and Awad's demeanor on the witness stand may have been questionable, but it clearly did not sway the jury. The jury found the defendant guilty of the DUI. And then also, based on the district attorney's office investigation, as well as the Fort Bragg Police Department IA, Internal Affairs Investigation, no evidence of possible perjury by Awad while testifying under oath in court was found in either of the investigations. I feel like I should write that out visibly and put it on the screen for all those people that watched my videos on this subject, where we clearly provided proof and documentation of that, and then they still came out of nowhere and said, oh, he committed perjury. Man, it blows my mind sometimes, like the lack of understanding or common sense that people have with some of this stuff is just hilarious to me. Anyway, Awad challenged his termination, blah, 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 blah. He ended up getting fired regardless, like I've already stated, and we know that because at the end of the day, it was failure to disclose, which Awad says, I should have been punished for sure. It was just, I feel that I deserved punishment for my actions, but I have never lied about what went on. To label me a dishonest cop and on the Brady list is unfair, especially when we've seen in comparison to other things what has gone around here. So he was fired and he was placed on this Brady list by David Eister at the DA's office, right? And that's going back to this article and some of these other things I'm going to discuss. So we don't know why he was placed on this Brady list. We don't, because as we've seen in the court arbitration, all the investigations, what we just saw right there, he never lied. He never lied. There was an omission of a friendship that had no bearing on this case at all, right? She still got the conviction of the DUI. He never lied on the stand, et cetera, et cetera. I'm beating a dead horse here. I know this. But Mike Geniella goes on to say, Awad's misconduct issues are the latest to surface in Mendocino County law enforcement during this past year. A respected community of professionals. The blue wall of silence. So you guys, that is a real thing. All you stupid people that keep sticking up for these cops automatically, especially when there is proof of their illegal activity or corruption or whatever, like you're all idiots. I don't know how else to say that. I mean, you people go to bat for these guys automatically because they know them as a person. It's like, they say, oh, I've known so-and-so my whole life. Therefore, it is literally impossible that guy, because he's a cop and I've known him my whole life, for him to be involved in any illegal activity at all. He's never done anything wrong. It's literally impossible. I know that because whenever he's not with me, I can telepathically hack into his brain and see everything that he's doing at all times, right? Obviously, I'm being a smartass. But there's no way to know that. You think that these cops go around, even if they're your friends, and be like, hey, Jim, yeah, I haven't seen you for a couple days. Yeah, man, I just been ripping people off and stealing their money and stealing their weed and selling the, fucking weed. Or I've been, sexually assaulting these women while on duty in uniform. Yeah, just, the usual, how, you know what I mean? Like, they're not going to broadcast that information. I hate to tell you that. And these people have this misconception that they're going to be doing these things. Now, I think that the public is starting to finally open their eyes a little bit more when it comes to these sorts of things. And it's not easy. Okay, for example, one of my really, really, really close friends that I used to work with is wrapped up in this RICO case in Mendocino County, the one that's been ongoing since 2017 with Zeke Flatten, involving those two Roanoke Park cops, Huffaker and Tatum. And we know Tatum is snitching now, and he's singing and stuff like that. And, but somebody I know that I'm friends with is wrapped up in this case with what it sounds like to me, evidence against him for doing these things. Now, I've known this dude a long time. He is a close friend of mine. Am I going to sit here and say, no, it's literally impossible? He would never be involved in this case with evidence. Like, just because I know him, he's my friend. and I've known him for X amount of years, and he is in law enforcement, so it's impossible, can't happen. No, I'm not that stupid like some of you are, or not. Some of these people in the community are, and they just they have their blinders on. My thought is, damn, that sucks. I hate to hear that, but knowing that people are human beings like cops are, not robots, and they fall victim to greed and anger, depression, stress, like basic emotions, like all of us, that it's possible. You hate to see it happen, but it does. Okay. And so that blue wall of silence, like I said, very, very real. Cops cover for each other. I've seen it personally, and it's just a natural thing. I mean, it really is. It's kind of goes to that, us versus them mentality situation. Now, it's not as prevalent in some areas, some states, some agencies. There's differences with a lot of these things. Of course, it's not like a uniform thing for everybody, right? I'm not saying all cops are liars. I'm not saying they're all corrupt. And I have to keep saying that because, again, like the perjury thing, you guys still don't understand what I'm saying sometimes, even though I feel like I'm very, very clear about what I mean. But I'm not saying it's all the case, but I'm just saying this blue wall of silence is a reality. I hate to tell you, in case you didn't know that, which you should. If you've been watching my videos for, you should know that by now. So this goes on. District Attorney Eister refuses to discuss the individual misconduct cases involving Awad and 3 other high-ranking former cops, or questions about the policies surrounding local police misconduct, or why he acts in some cases and not others. So that's the big issue here. And the other people he's talking about, former Ukiah Police Sergeant Kevin Murray, who got that insane deal for what he did, right? He got fired and convicted, and he got some probation, and that was it. A former Ukiah Police Chief, Noble Weidlich, who is now in civil court federally for allegedly what his victim is accusing him of, forced oral copulation while he was on duty in uniform. And it sounds like there's actually some decent evidence in that case, from my understanding. Text message that he sent to her, as well as her Ring camera information, obviously proving that he was there. The fact that she called right away to report it to the ex-sheriff, Tom Allman, and then, he called Matt Kendall, the current sheriff there, and then they kicked it over to Sonoma County for the investigation aspect to recuse themselves and remove themselves from any potential biases that were going to be there, right? So, Noble Weidlich was fired recently. The city of Ukiah stated that he was, fired for some other incident and not related to this, but some other policy violation in an article that was published by the Press Democrat. It's so he just happened to get fired for something else? I don't think so. So all 3 cases involved sexual allegations, blah, 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 blah. Why some cops get branded as untruthful or worse and land on the Brady list and others do not is unclear and outside of public review. There are no uniform protocols or any listing, and it's at the sole discretion of the individual prosecutor. So like I said, no uniformity at all. There's no rule for all these these DA's offices in the country. And a former state and federal prosecutor, Val Van Brocklin, the lack of uniformity creates problems. And some prosecutors weaponize the Brady, and there's career-ending consequences, right? So Mike Geniella has written about Brady a few times now, I think, and he uses that term, weaponize, just like this Van Brocklin individual did. They weaponize the Brady system, meaning because there's no rules, there's no regulations, there's no anything. Prosecutors, based on how they're feeling about that person, their personal thoughts toward them, if they've pissed them off in the past, their personal involvement in a case, basically anything, they can put these cops on their own Brady list and have the career-ending result for these cops. Like, for example, Chris Awad. Now, Chris Awad, is he an idiot? Yes, he is. And I've told him that to his face. He is stupid. And he shouldn't have done what he did, for sure. He should have been punished. Absolutely. Did he qualify for the Brady list? No, he didn't. And should he have been terminated? You know, that's up to opinion, right? Some people have no nonsense, no, like zero tolerance for any slight wrongdoings that cops do. And I can understand that because I can put myself in people's shoes and see difference of opinions, right? In my opinion, did it warrant complete termination? No. Did it warrant him being disciplined, and maybe put on some sort of performance enhancing like action plan, or written up and all those sorts of things, and like maybe even on some sort of probationary thing again, where like any other whatever slight wrongdoing, then he gets fired? Yeah, like something like that, in my opinion. Yeah. Other people are going to be like, no, Trent, you're stupid, he should have been fired for not disclosing a friendship that apparently he should have known to disclose, even though he thought the case was done because these two attorneys had agreed to do a plea deal. And he's like, I'm not going to have to go to court. This case is already over. I arrested her months and months ago, and whatever. I mean, so there's differences of opinion, and that's fine. So this Van Brocklin, I understand the importance and I fully support Brady requirements, but there needs to be due process with its use. Just as we give murderers due process, we need to give people placed on a Brady list the same. And I agree with that to a certain extent. So David Eister, in fact, used that immunity to free himself at taxpayers' expense in excess of $50,000 from a 2017 civil lawsuit filed by Amanda Carley when the role of a Brady listing first surfaced locally in her case. So for those of you that didn't watch those videos, Amanda Carley, I worked with her briefly before I was a cop as a probation officer. And back then she was physically abused and verbally multiple times by her then fiance, whatever you want to call him, Noble Weidlich, ex-Ukiah police chief, who I just discussed, that is now facing another allegation against him, but this time it's sexual in nature, and he's in the federal court, civilly. It's a civil suit. And so Dave Eister had placed Amanda Carley on this Brady list because when she was a probation officer, she got asked by an investigator during one of these domestic violence incidents. Somebody had told the Ukiah Police Department about it, and they sent an investigator and to her work and embarrassed her in front of all of her work colleagues. So that investigator is an idiot. And Ukiah Police Department, whoever, ordered that at the time, you're an idiot too. I don't know what made you think that was a good idea. What you should have done is called her initially and said, hey, is there a time and a place where you feel comfortable meeting with me to discuss this issue? Not show up at her work out of the blue and be like, hey man, is he kicking your ass? You're stupid. Whoever that was. She said the name before, but I don't remember. But Eister placed her on a Brady list because at the time when that dude showed up to randomly showed up at her work to interview her about this, she said, no, nothing has transpired. I am not a victim of domestic violence. So Dave Eister said, you're on the Brady list, later on because you didn't feel like being a victim at the time. I still cannot process that. Like a victim of domestic violence and you get put on a Brady list because you don't feel like telling the investigator what's happening to you. Yeah. Anyway, so she obviously the civil suit recently settled out for that. Noble Weidlich was obviously guilty because he just paid her out and her daughter, Maddie Carley, because Maddie was a witness to a lot of this, and there's the child abuse allegation for the emotional trauma aspect, right? So he paid them out and they settled that case because, like I said, he was guilty. Even though you had those people, I grew up with Noble Weidlich, I known him my whole life. He would never do that. Yeah, he would, and he did. All right, so just accept it. So Eister, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, in June of last year, Weidlich was fired by city officials after allegations that he was sexually assaulting another Ukiah woman. So yeah, and that's what's going to court with him right now. So, and also, Eister has sat on the results of the Sonoma County investigation into Weidlich's possible criminal case. So Sonoma County was the one that did that investigation for Noble Weidlich, the police chief. And I already did a video on this, right? This is still top secret. Nobody talks about it, but I don't give a shit, and it should be out there in the public. He went over on duty to this lady's house to borrow something, full uniform, gun and everything, went in there, she gave him this item, and he forced her to, this is all allegations, okay? So I don't have the proof that he did these things. I don't have the video, or I wasn't there watching it, thank God. But like, this is what is being alleged, right? So he went in there and he forced her to give him oral sex, and then he left. He sent her a text message within like minutes of him leaving. And this is verified via Time for her Ring camera and other text messages that they exchanged between them. He texted her and said, wow, that was really awkward, which you would never say that, right? If something was consensual, you're not going to immediately text that person and say, hey, that was really awkward. Like, so he could tell that it wasn't consensual on her end. And she's alleging that she felt, forced and obligated to do it because he was the chief of police and he had his badge and his gun and his command presence, and whatever he did or said to her, I don't have 100% details on that, like made it so she felt like she had to do this act. And then, like I said, right away, she called Tom Allman. She talked to the investigators in Sonoma County, provided her cell phone willingly, said, hey, look at all these texts that we have, not all these texts, but these messages. They sat down with Noble and he admitted to it, but he said it was consensual, and then he got fired. But Eister refuses to talk about the details of the case, which I just told you guys. And also Eister remains silent about the results of an outside investigation completed last fall on former Willits Police Lieutenant Derek Hendry, alleged sexual assaults on a Willits woman. So, and that was my old lieutenant and used to be my friend. We worked together as deputies at the sheriff's office initially. Like I said, he got, and Mike Geniella talks about this again, Derek Hendry got fired from the sheriff's office for lying and time fraud, and then got picked up at Willits Police Department and then became a lieutenant. And this lady victim and a few others came forward and reported that Derek, after he got fired for sexually harassing another woman at the police department that worked there at the Willits Police Department, they felt comfortable coming forward to report these forced sexual assaults and rapes and everything where he is the suspect. That went to the Lake County Sheriff's Office. The detectives did the investigation, and I know that the detective who did it, I don't know him personally, I know his name. And they did a search warrant on Derek's house and seized his electronic devices and blah, 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 blah. They concluded this, sent it back to Willits Police Department because it was their, jurisdiction and everything. They sent it to the DA's office. But Eister refuses to, Mike Geniella is saying he refuses to talk about it. And we haven't seen any court proceedings with him or Weidlich. And in Weidlich's case, the victim in that has basically relayed the information that she does want to seek not only, obviously, civil prosecution because she's going to federal court now, but criminal prosecution as well. But the local DA is doing nothing about this, even though it was in their jurisdiction. And then the Derek Hendry thing. We don't know. We don't know. And it's very interesting to see that. I mean, I know for a fact that Derek Hendry and Eister are friends. Because like I said, I was friends with Derek for a long time, so I know that they're friends. I'm not saying that Eister is purposely not moving forward with Derek Hendry's case because of that friendship. I will give Eister credit that with the Noble thing, he immediately tried to hand it off to the Attorney General's office because he's just like, I don't even want there to be any potential bias or question thereof. But the Attorney General said, hey, I don't see any bias with this case, man. So figure it out, bro. Like, it's your jurisdiction. Like, what's the issue? But clearly the Attorney General's office, the feds, the state, they don't understand the insane biases and corruption and everyone's related to everybody. Everybody knows everybody. Small town, rural policing and politics and everything. Like, they don't fully grasp that information or how it is. Right. And it's true. Like, I grew up in Ukiah. I've been there most of my life in Mendocino County. And it is definitely true. It's who you know. And if you're hooked up with the right people, you can get away with a lot of shit for sure. For sure. So, and then Carly, Amanda Carly goes on to say, there is no doubt I was a victim of Eister's weaponization of Brady. Because again, she didn't lie. She just didn't feel like being a victim of domestic violence at the time. So and that's what I'm saying. Like, so where are the parameters of this Brady list in Mendocino County? And we don't know who's on this list either because it's for DA's eyes only. And it's, so nobody else can see it. And we just have to trust that they're going to provide that information to the defense too, whenever this person goes to court. And so Carly agrees with Awad that Eister seems to use the Brady bat, quotes, against cops who personally fall into his disfavor, while ignoring more serious credibility issues involving others. So I just got asked this question too, what is the Brady bat? And I kind of described it already, but it's the weaponization. Mike Geniella, states it. It is the weaponization of the Brady system. And Amanda said it, falling into Eister, the DA's disfavor, the Brady bat, meaning, okay, you want to go against me, or I don't like you personally for some other reason. You tried to mess up one of my cases. You X, Y, and Z, whatever the reason is. Amanda states in here that, and Awad does too, that, and Mike Geniella has said this as well, having worked as the public information officer for the DA's office, they're all stating that Eister weaponizes this, and the Brady bat is going after and putting cops or whoever he wants, in law enforcement on this list for his own personal reasons, and completely tarnishes their career, and it essentially ends these people's careers because he's using it to, at his whim and making up the rules as he goes along. And it's like, if I feel like it this day, I'm going to put you in on this thing and not these other people. And so Chris Awad concurs. There are other officers still working who have done far worse, but were given second chances and are still officers today. Yep, that's true. Awad said he still feels resentment because he voluntarily agreed to a follow-up interview with Eister's chief investigator, Kevin Bailey, at the time. And Eister used Bailey's findings to justify placing Awad on a Brady's list, which the justifications are hilarious. And they prove this, Mike does, by bringing up ex-police sergeant Kevin Murray, who was fired, arrested, all those court proceedings with him. I've done prior videos on him, the sexual stuff, and he got this insane hookup from the DA's office, and there was people protesting and stuff because of it. So on one of the videos I did with Kevin Murray, so he severely beat disabled Ukiah veteran Chris Roscoe. Sorry, Chris, if I mispronounced your last name. And I've talked to Chris on the phone when I was doing this case, and this is true. So Kevin Murray, and it states it in the article, that he lied on the stand during this case, and it was proven that he lied on the stand during giving testimony. And he was never placed on this Brady list as a documented liar, even though he lied. So Kevin Murray, straight lies in a case that he was involved with. And they ended up paying Chris out over $1 million because of the fact that his civil rights were violated. He got the shit kicked out of him for no reason. I put up the body cam footage on those videos. You could tell, right? So, and then people sticking up for Kevin Murray during those incidents, and then everything else that has followed recently. I mean, I'm hopeful that you feel stupid for doing that, but anyway, but it was proven that he was being dishonest in his courtroom testimony, but he doesn't get placed on the Brady list, but Chris Awad does for not omitting a friendship that he hooked up with that girl, after his report was submitted, after he arrested her, after everything, and he thought the case was done, or Amanda Carly, who didn't want to be a victim of domestic violence, yet Kevin Murray doesn't get put on this list. Also, you have, which is Quincy Cromer, who's a current lieutenant with the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office, who I've done a video on before in the past. And he's in charge of internal affairs investigations right now at the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office. And his two prior jobs ago, he was a police officer with the Ukiah Police Department. He struck a vehicle in his patrol car, and a witness saw it, reported it, and he lied about it in an IA. He got called into the investigation and he lied. And his father-in-law at the time was captain at the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office, and he was able to quit in lieu of termination. He got proven to have lied in official capacity, and he went to work for dispatch for a period of time, and then now he's a lieutenant in charge of IAs. So he lied in his own IA, now he runs IAs. That's hilarious, and whatever. But so he's a documented liar, right? And then you have JD Comer, who is another current lieutenant at the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office, and he was in an incident, I think this was like 2013, I want to say, with 2 other deputies on the coast. I've done a video about this before too, and they were all drunk and they all got into a fight, long story short, and they all got into an IA, and JD was a sergeant at the time, and he lied in his IA. He was the only one who his statement was different from the other two cops involved. So his big punishment was losing his sergeant position for a year, and then that was it, by Tom Allman, and then now he's a lieutenant. So both those guys are documented liars in an official capacity, so their truthfulness is brought into question under Brady, right? Like, how can we trust them? They lied already once about their misdeeds in an official capacity and on duty, or not. No, JD wasn't on duty, but you know, they're law enforcement, and they lied about these things in an IA in an investigation. So it's like, how are we able to believe that they're going to testify, you know, truthfully on the stand when they go to court? You can't. So under Brady, technically, they should be on this list too, but they're not, you know, and they're still current cops in an administrative level, very high up, right? And, you know, and then for Chris Awad's case, you know, during that investigation, which we proved in the videos, which is even more proved here in Mike Geniella's article, Kevin Bailey, the chief investigator for the district attorney's office at the time, that caused part of the reason Chris Awad got dragged into this and fired. He stated that the DA's office at the time did not offer at any point, they did not offer the DA's office this girl a wet and reckless in lieu of DUI, which is obviously not true, because you have the public defender, the defense here, stating, no, Sisney and I made a deal. We agreed it was going to be a wet and reckless. So the deal was already made. The only reason it changed is because Eister got into this issue with Sisney, and Sisney just took off, and then they changed it. So Kevin Bailey just lied, and he lied about some other stuff in there too, so did Melissa Weems, but then again, I'm sure they were never put on a Brady list either, and, you know, or whatever. Obviously they're not cops, but they, you know, Kevin Bailey having been prior law enforcement, then also is tasked with doing investigations as well as potentially testifying in court, right? So it just, where do we draw the line? I guess my point is, like, we need some sort of some guidelines here. You can't just put people on there for no reason at all. Amanda Carley, Chris Awad, and then not put others on there that should be on there. JD Comer, Quincy Cromer, probably Kevin Bailey, and others that have lied and that are not on this list. I don't know. It's very interesting. So, and yeah, I wish he used Brady across the board instead of selectively using the bat on just some of us, said Chris Awad. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if you're going to put Chris Awad's dumbass on there, you know, or Amanda Carley or whatever, you know, like, which, I mean, Amanda doesn't even come close to qualifying at all. Like, so that's still very confusing for me. But just make it the same for everybody. Like, you know, don't be selective and say you can be on it, but no, I like you, so you're not on it, even though you lied for sure officially. This guy didn't lie, but I don't like him because he pissed me off, because he challenged my authority, or he didn't agree with my, you know, my ruling on this case, or how I wanted to proceed with this case, or whatever, or my personal friendship with the you know, with the other person's family or whatever that's going to court, or, you know, whatever the case is. And so Mike goes on to say, in 2021, a year after Eister's Brady declaration to Awad. So here's your Brady declaration. You're on Brady list for some reason. And then 5 years after he gave it to Carley, Deputy DA Luke Oakley testified under oath that he didn't know whether a former Brady system existed within the DA's office. His testimony was taken in a civil lawsuit filed against former Ukiah Sergeant Murray. So on May 18th, 21, Oakley was specifically asked if he knew a Brady list existed for prosecutors to review. I don't know if there is a list. I mean, generally based on my past experience, I have received email notifications that certain officers have Brady material. Who do those emails come from? And Oakley responded, based on my experience, Mr. Eister. So Luke Oakley, he's actually a super cool dude. He's prosecuted a lot of my cases that I did when I was still in law enforcement there. He's smart. He knows his shit. I always had a great experience with that guy. But basically what's happening here is he works under Eister, okay? So he's a deputy district attorney, so he works under the DA, who's David Eister. And he's stating in this, under oath, in this civil lawsuit filed against ex-Sergeant Murray, I've never seen a list. I don't know if it exists, just Eister sends me emails if somebody is on the list or not. The point is, the only person in this county who knows 100% who is on this imaginary made-up unicorn list is David Eister, the DA. We don't know who's on it. We don't know who qualifies. We don't know what the qualifications are. There's obviously no uniformity. There's no any of these things because we've seen the vast differences that I just brought up with these individuals, and how they're not. It's not all the same. Oakley also testified to his knowledge Murray was never placed on a Brady list, even though it eventually was disclosed that the officer had lied and filed a false arrest report during a 2018 investigation into the vicious beating of Chris Roscoe. Boom, right there. So he lied and he filed a false arrest report against this dude. Kevin Murray did, when he was a sergeant at the Ukiah Police Department. And he never got put on a Brady list, but Chris Awad did, again for the omission, and then Amanda Carley for not wanting to be a victim of domestic violence. And then, 1.1 million was paid out to Chris Roscoe, which I already stated. And then, Murray was fired eventually for sexually assaulting a woman in a Ukiah motel room. The victim later settled for $250K. So the city was just dishing out over $1.35 million, if not more, for Kevin Murray alone during that time. And he got to keep his job at the time because guess what? His immediate superior was Noble Weidlich, his friend. Again, just to go toward the corruption, and it's who you know within that county. And so, selective use of career-ending measures. Brady was the kiss of death for me professionally, said Awad. Well, Chris Awad, I think the best thing that happened for you was to get out of that corrupt county, especially Fort Bragg, because we just saw on their last video that those city council, they're just blatantly admitted to, being corrupt. So anyway, long story short with a lot of that stuff, guys, is when it comes to dishonest cops and this Brady list situation and stuff like that, and even getting, I've found recently trying to get people's cops records or arrest reports or whatever through the Freedom of Information Act and all these sorts of things. So that's all lies. That's not real. It's all fairy pixie dust, imaginary foo-foo stuff. You're gonna hear people oh no, Trent, it's the law. They have to provide you this information. If you go and do a public records request, a PRA, to a law enforcement agency regarding a certain cop, they have to provide you the information. Or if you request this report, they have to give it to you. No, they don't. No, they don't. They absolutely do not. They find ways around it, because I'm experiencing that right now, as are a couple of my friends, one of which is a reporter. And we know the information is there for a fact, right? But what they say is that there's nothing disclosable at this time, or they word it in a certain fancy way. But what they know is, and people in general in the public, that you're just a regular citizen. How are you going to prove it otherwise? We know it's there, but what are you going to do about it? You're going to go hire and spend thousands of dollars on an attorney to sue them and subpoena their records, and then they can still destroy it or get rid of it. So there's really, it's made up. The FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, and the PRAs, that is not real. That is another illusion to portray this level of transparency and trust that is just completely non-existent. It does not exist. For example, in an article written by some, I'm not even going to say his name because he doesn't deserve that credit, but some guy that I'm pretty sure he's on the spectrum in some regard, but he put out this article with this girl, didn't fact check at all, didn't do anything, whatever, and she was lying her ass off the whole time. We have proof of it, even in the police report that said that this was on behalf of Chris Awad, right? And where they painted this picture of this incident that transpired. So in the police report, it clearly documents that she's lying just based on that alone. Not to mention the Facebook stuff, which we have proof that she friend requested him first on Facebook. We got all that shit, right? It's truly comical. But the point is, I try to get that report from Fort Bragg Police Department. A DUI. It is public information, a basic ass DUI that this girl did, right? And in the article, she's, this journalist, which means that's his title that he made up in his head, right? He's basically just a random person that happened to like type stuff on the internet. Said that, she was driving home from a wedding and she had been drinking wine and beer and she decided to pull over because she felt that it was wrong to drive or whatever, some stupid shit. And it was just like, and she was sitting there sleeping and, she got contacted by Chris Awad. And then later on, he flirted with her over a cell phone, even though she was willing. And at no point did she say, stop texting me or anything. And there was only a 3-year age difference and they were both adults, but he made it out to saying like he was like years older. Anyway, so that was the picture painted, right? And so I was trying to get this report because what really happened is this girl was so hammered, she blew a .17, was so drunk that she went off the side of the road in front of a school that she, I believe that she taught at, actually. This is nighttime. And her vehicle was so like parked so egregiously, like clearly she went off the road, that it got called into the Fort Bragg PD. Chris Awad shows up. He didn't happen to be there. He got called to it and she was passed out drunk with her vehicle running in front of a school. And he had to wake her up and she's like, oh, I'm here to check on my kiddos. Like, cause she was so drunk, she had no idea what she was saying. She thought she was going to work or something. And then some other stuff in there. But so I was trying to get this report, right? Totally public information. They still have it there. They hold reports there for up to 10 years, which is also kind of weird that it's not longer. And they said that no public information is disclosable or whatever. And it's like, yeah, it is. You guys, you know why I was asking for it. You absolutely do. And it was just comical. But what am I going to do about it, right? Like, I'm not going to go spend the money on an attorney. Like, I know the records are there. I know it exists. And it's like, they didn't want to provide it to me. But when you get records like that, or like a police report, if there is something that's not disclosable to the public, like somebody's social or date of birth or whatever, the records clerk will black that information out, be a huge black box, right? So you can't see that, but you still get the report, right? But my point is, I know for a fact that report exists. They know it exists, and they're stating that, it's not disclosable for whatever reason. But that's the thing. This is kind of just to teach you guys some stuff too, about the lack of the illusion of transparency, like I've already stated before, about how certain things are not obtainable, and you're made to believe that they are. And also my point to go along with a lot of this too, just this article, it was very interesting to me, and it was very well written and researched. Everyone's going to have their own ideas, and that's totally fine. You're able to make up your mind. If you think that, Chris Awad should have gotten fired, great. If you think that Amanda Carley should be on the Brady list for not wanting to be a victim of domestic violence, whatever, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, right? I'm just giving you guys things to think about. Obviously my own opinion as well, but more importantly, be careful what you read, in the media. And I guess this is kind of the same goes for me. There's no way to know for sure. Well, yeah, I mean, there is, because I show documents and shit when I'm talking about stuff on my videos, right? Even though when I do, some idiot says I'm being selective. It's like, no, man, sometimes I don't have hours. This is already 50 minutes, right? So if I show every little thing, it's going to be a 19-hour long video. I'm not going to do that, but I'll link the original thing in the description so you guys can see it, or whatever it is. But my point is, you guys don't have to believe me either, but the stuff that I've said has definitely come to fruition, and I provide documentation when applicable. If I'm not positive then on something, then I'll state that, of course, as always. And yeah, so just be careful what you read, be careful what you watch, keep an open mind. And don't be so naive to think that just because you are friends with somebody or related to them, or they are in law enforcement, that they cannot also do things that are wrong or illegal or whatever. I mean, it happens all the time. It sucks. It's not a good feeling. You know, I was getting roasted by lots of people on the internet. Not so much anymore, but back when I first started, you know, when I was initially talking about Derrick Henry and Randy Johnson, and Randy Johnson's like one of the biggest crooks ever, along with Shannon Barney, also one of the biggest crooks ever. And it blows my mind that that guy like was able to maintain his law enforcement career, especially as a lieutenant, after the things that he did in Covelo. And he's oh, Shannon, you are just the absolute worst. I don't know how you're not in prison, but you should be. And trying to act like all that stuff didn't happen with Jason Cox and all that. There's a reason why you guys sealed that case. There's a reason why it's sealed, all right? Anyway, that's a whole separate thing. But yeah, so, and side note with some of this stuff, so yeah, no update, whatever. That was kind of tied into a lot of this. We don't know what's happening with Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry still facing, I don't know, maybe this criminal prosecution. Noble Weidlich, federal court. We don't know about the criminal side of things yet. Fort Bragg Police Department. There is a whole bunch of wacky shenanigans going on at the Fort Bragg Police Department right now. And I am waiting to see what happens with it before I do a video on it. But yeah, I mean, I've been leaving that place out in a lot of my videos, and holy hell, it is probably, I mean, it's on par, if not worse, than a lot of other of the towns and cities in Mendocino County. Holy shit. And I just didn't know it at the time because I've never been affiliated with it. But the more I hear and the more I see, wow. Side note, Chris Awad and we are, you know, we did those 4 videos together, and we decided to do a podcast. And, you know, some people might think that's stupid, whatever. We don't really care. And, you know, part of the reason is, you know, people were telling me not to affiliate with him. And, you know, Kirk Mason, ex-Lieutenant Kirk Mason, was on, you know, one of my videos I did on Chris, like, you know, you're hitching your horse up to the wrong wagon, meaning that, you know, me affiliating with Chris Awad is discrediting myself because the media went after him and portrayed him to be this monster. But we just, you know, proven with Mike Geniella's article here that it's all full of shit. It was just gossip pieces written by people with the maturity level of a 13-year-old, you know? So, but we're going to do a podcast. We're in the process of getting that together right now. And it's going to be different than my YouTube channel. We're probably going to do weekly uploads and have it through Spotify, and you know, we have a website and all that sorts of stuff. But it's going to be more like laid back, you know, not like just the corruption stuff, but like our personal, you know, stories and you know, things that go on, you know, within the law enforcement world, and just random shit also. And I think for our first podcast we're going to do is the hookup culture in law enforcement. And, you know, kind of coincides with that lady, forgot her name, that cop in Tennessee that got wrapped up with 6 of her coworkers. You guys think that just happens in Tennessee? No. Very, very common. Very common. So we're going to talk about the hookup culture in law enforcement for our first one, but, you know, our personal experiences with it, stuff that we saw personally, that we heard, that we know of, you know, in that realm. And Mendocino County, oh my God, it gets really weird in that place. With law enforcement and firefighters and the medical field employees, damn. Yeah, so you guys, if you care and you want to listen to it, we have an Instagram page, and that'll have our information on it with our website and everything like that. And then if you don't want to listen to it, you don't give a shit, then great. You know, you don't have to check it out. I'm just, you know, throwing it out there, whatever. Mostly it's just because him and I, it's just something we feel like doing and we want to do it. And if, you know, 2 or 3 people want to listen to it, great. I mean, we're not obviously going to get any money out of it or anything like that. And I might do it like kind of like Joe Rogan does, where like I record the podcast, but not upload the whole thing to YouTube, but maybe like, you know, 5 to 10 minute long segments out of it that are specific topics that I think that might be interesting, or you guys might want to hear about, or whatever, or yeah. So that is going to be it for the video. I'm going to link Mike Geniella's article down below. Kind of disappointed that it was written in the Anderson Valley Advertiser, but you win some, you lose some. So yeah, that's going to be it for this one, guys. And if you stayed around for, holy hell, it was an hour long. I apologize. These long ones get away from me. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.